So, looking back on my career, as it's all me at the moment, as a 14-year-old, I joined the Auckland Magic Society, where I first met this gentleman, and it was at the fire station at the top of Grays Avenue. We had a meeting there, so he doesn't know, but we go back a long way. I was very in awe of this man with his magic. I thought he was unbelievable, and indeed he still is. And I used to go to all the magic shows like Salka that came from India, and I was fascinated by magic. And I still am, so I was delighted when Jon was going to be the guest. And I just wrote down, off the top of my head, how I felt about him. I just wrote down simply, he's a master magician, a world-class illusionist, a ventriloquist, and a foundation member, of course, of VAC. So I'd like you to welcome Jon Zealando. We've had numerous telephone conversations. I'm saying, Jon, we have to keep them short, please, because I've got a lot of questions I want to ask you. He assures me we're going to. And hold your breath. He switched on. He switched on. All right.
Not yet? Oh, sorry about that.
Jon, when did you first become interested in magic? How did it happen?
I think the minister at our church, who was called Pa Guinness, he showed me how to pull my finger off. Went down very well at the roast. This old thing here.
Yes.
And then I did see, quite interesting, I was quite a good church lad. I was a server in the church, and I saw John Calvert, and he did a full evening show. He's a very glamorous character. There's some good fellows over there of him, and he is sort of lived next to Errol Flynn, and had done theatre and did impersonations and things, and did some aircraft impersonations, which were, I was very keen on noises and train noises and that sort of thing. Anyway, so I can remember being very moved. I was down under a prairie tree, which is on our back lawn, and it was my prairie tree. I've got a photo somewhere of me standing alongside it as a kid. And it sort of took, I really did feel moved that I'd become a magician. It was sort of almost a spiritual thing.
What age would that be?
I'm about 11. Yeah. And boy next door, and a couple of other boys, we went at the odd tricks, and we had the Fulsham's Fun book, and if we taught any saw a trick somewhere, we'd show each other. We called ourselves the Ku Klux Klan.
Then you started work. Let's just whiz on a little bit. In the 1950s, in the Bank of New South Wales, I believe.
Yes, went into the bank. My father was at the National Bank, and the Wales was, we weren't allowed to go to the same bank that your father was in.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't an ambition of mine to be in the bank, except counting money or that sort of thing.
So Dad was in the bank, you had to be in another bank. Yes, you're going to count some money? I don't know what you're going to do here.
Yes. There you go. That is when you're shooting blanks, you see.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, this is a little trick we do now. It's my favourite little trick. There you go.
Wow.
And that's why they threw me out of the bank.
Very good.
I was actually a smoker too. I smoked, and
is that why your nickname was Small?
that's right.
Is that how you got it in the
Yes,
bank?
I was the only one that could sort of smoke around the place and get away with it. And there was big write-ups in the paper about smog in London in those days. And I remember one was smog effects felt in Auckland, and somebody pinned it up in the postage department. Yeah.
So you talked about the gentleman, the book is over there from Hollywood, and Jon has some wonderful scrapbooks over there, which is amazing to look through. Was he really the instigator, your idol for the magic? That's how you set your sights on?
Yeah. The actual magic that I ended up performing was based on Cess Morris, who was the Kiwi Concert Party magician.
Oh, yes.
And he was 9 years sort of, we didn't realise that, people didn't realise that. The Kiwi Concert Party went on about 9 years, and I think 4 years it played in Melbourne.
That's right.
And so his act was very refined. The conductor of the orchestra was also the director, and he would see him do that trick every night, and he would say, well, why you keep doing it that way? So, well, can't you you don't have to turn around to do that. And he got his act down to such a wonderful, refined thing, and then it was lovely that eventually I met him. But I saw him doing cards, and I thought, oh, there must be powder on the cards. So somebody said it could be powder on the cards. And I remember going home and getting flour.
Oh, putting them on the cards so they slipped easy?
No, it made a good cake, actually.
So where did you come up with the name Jon Zealando? How did you come
that
by
was
that?
at Mount Albert Grammar. After I'd been Mount Albert, I left work, and I was thinking I was into the bank, and there was a guy called Michael Kuhn, who was in theatre, and he played at the St Andrews Theatre, and he was just a friend that I met in town. I didn't remember him at school very much, but he took the part of the Winslow boy in some of the productions. So he was quite a theatre goer, and we went up to the old loft and played, The Man with the Golden Arm and that sort of thing. Yeah. And I was going to do this 2-hour show, and I had to think of a stage name, and I was going to call myself TJ. It sounded a bit like Jay's Fluid, so we left that one out. And then I was going to call myself Alberto, and I was like Delano in Christchurch, and Alberto did that. And he said, no, think back, make it Zealando, John. And then he said, well, cut the H out of John. My second name is John, and I was Fred Dagg's, brother really, on Trev really, and of course Rusty joined me on the Trev list. And we settled on that, and we cut the A out of it. It still confuses people, including one up there. He says, how do you spell it? Is it A or not? Yeah, so we eventually put that back in, because on the phone you can say, oh, it's Jon Zealando, and they go, oh, how do you say? They say Zealando, Zealand. Can you do that again?
Let's go back to the school a moment.
Yeah.
Your first acting job was actually in drag. You played a girl, didn't you?
I wasn't going to mention it. Yeah, well, we're in a all-boys school, Yes. There's a photo over there, if any of you would like to examine it. I was a waitress.
A waitress?
A waitress. And I remember my mother getting old stockings, and you could tear them out to, wreck them.
Yeah.
And she made that into some sort of a wig, and I remember having to try and walk with one foot in front of the other. Yeah, so
is this a family?
Quite exciting, isn't it?
Is this a family treat? Because your son Brian, who's here tonight, you dressed him up as a bunny girl for an illusion when he was 6 years of age.
Well, what happened then? Young, isn't it? Yeah, poor Brian. We went on the cruise ship. Now, I've got to thank Silvio Duprat for that. Silvio Duprat had been on the Mariposa, and the American ships going to Australia, and he mentioned my name to a New Zealand agent here who did, it was quite strange, because they didn't usually book acts from New Zealand. They had the American band on board, and Silvio went over, I think, and he just mentioned to this guy that I might be something, and they booked me and my wife and Brian as a baby to go to America. I wasn't paid. It was, but it was a.
So did you work your passes like you performed?
Yeah, well, I would rephrase that.
Oh, yeah, like that.
And Brian was a likely candidate. He was only 6 or something, and I tried to figure out these and make a theme, and I sort of got the old rabbit theme, which I was sort of fairly well known for. I'd say at the beginning of the act, what do you want out of the hat? And I'd say, a rabbit. So I got stuck with that then. I'm still doing this 69 years bloody later or whatever it is. I've lost count already. Anyway, so we did that. I managed to, and he jumped up as this little bunny, and it was quite a nice double take because they didn't think, I said, well, if you wanted a bunny, why you... I got somebody to yell out, what about a bunny, a bunny girl instead. It was a costume thing, and he bought this costume box up, and eventually I said, well, if you wanted a bunny, we could get one, and Brian hopped up. Yeah, I've got a slide of that somewhere.
Is Brian going to follow in your footsteps, do you think?
I don't know, he's he's been staying behind a bit, but he did help me. He's helped me down the years in many ways, and very stable, and helping me, particularly now I'm very much by myself. So I really appreciated him being there for me. And he helped me with escapes and things like that, some escapes and more dangerous things. I was going to do the escape from the hangman's noose tonight, but he said, no, you better not do it, because I looked a bit depressed lately.
How did you meet your wife, Janet? Did she know that you were Jon Zealando at that time? Or
I met her very, yes, I was. It was the old Crystal Palace, and that Merv Thomas show band, Phil Warren, who was a Mount Albert grammar, was me, and he was running it, although I didn't really appreciate that at the time. He was hidden away a wee bit, but she'd come back, she was a little bit older than me, and she'd been to England, done her overseas experience, and she was there, and I did a show there once, and then I went back to go there just as a dance.
Okay, and that's where you met her, just going to a dance?
Yeah.
So she had no idea that you were in the
entertainment.
Then you've sawn her in half many a time after that, haven't you?
Yes, I did it 64 times in 2 weeks.
Now
beat that, 64 times. It's got to be a record, doesn't it?
It's cast from...
6 shows a day it was, up on the farmer's roof.
What did you get paid for that back then?
My first fee I got there was, I turned down Johnny Devlin tour, who was offering me $20 a week at Phil Warren and Kerridge, and I discovered under my prairie tree that I actually could walk on fire. I'd started fire eating at Mount Albert, and it was one of those things. You must be able to do this, and so my neighbour happened to be worked at the farmers, and the next thing the farmers were saying, well, can you do 5 more? So I said yes, and it's going to cost you £100 a week. And at that stage, it was 4 times a day. £100, because my father was on £20 at the end of his career. So it was quite a remarkable feat for me to be cheeky enough to actually go for it. And I think Mary Thrall didn't really have anything to do with the setting of the fee, but I think there was involvement in the actual negotiation in the end.
Were your parents supportive of you wanting to go into the entertainment business?
Not really. My mother was fairly, she was theatre. But Dad was really out of it, and he was very about security, and so that was a bit of I was a bit of a tearaway that way.
Cast your mind back to 1972. Now, you and Lou Clawson won the Benny Award that year.
Yes.
You've actually designed the Benny Award, and you were friends with Edgar Benny all his life. How did you come up with the design?
That was... They asked me at the last minute, no, not at the last minute, but then they established it, and Lou said we should have an award, and I'd known of Benny, but not as closely as you imply there, but I looked for something that indicated personality, which is the theatre masks, and then I was quite keen on making it look like a figure, and Les Andrews will tell you that it looks like a man in a raincoat and it's side on. and I was really hoping that it wouldn't look that way, that I'd somehow distort it round, and Henry Moore had been influencing me there. We had a standing joke when we made balloon articles, that was Woman, Mother and Child by Henry Moore, and people would laugh. So there's the holes in the thing, and it just seemed to be the right thing, and it looked a bit like the Emmy or whatever from a bit of a distance, And it had the sort of Maori thing about it as well.
But it's never dated. That's the nice thing about that design.
Yes.
It will not date, which is great.
No, I was quite thrilled about that.
Talking about not dating, your two other children, the Tin Man and Pinocchio, of course,
Yes.
which are here tonight.
Yes.
Did you have any trouble with the Disney people? I mean, getting as close as you possibly could to Pinocchio? I mean, that was
Yeah. My father had booked me up on reading Pinocchio story, and I've still got the book. And I've got a photo of me at about 7 trying to make a little thing with a long nose and a handkerchief, you know. So I had this ambition to make a Pinocchio. I think, in actual fact, because Pinocchio is a historic story, it was 100 years old, about 20 years ago now, from Italy, and there was copyright problems. I think that the story, I think they had a problem copyrighting Pinocchio, probably on that grounds, and that's why you
had no trouble with
I was always a bit worried. I didn't know about copyrights, but I remember saying Pinocchio, P-I-N-O-K-E.
Oh, okay, good.
And I often referred to him as Pinocchio.
Pinocchio.
Yeah, so I did.
Now, you were a very good-looking man in your youth, shall we say. I mean, Uriah Kuriakin from Uncle.
Yes.
You portrayed him. There's a picture over there of you. You were likened to James Dean.
Yes.
Was this a hindrance or a help in your career?
Me and Don Linden did very well. Yeah, because Don was in there. I was even likened to Don Linden.
Oh, we won't go that far.
Yeah.
Don's a good friend, but I don't think that he is.
Yeah. We were in the same area, and we were often mistaken together.
You did a TV commercial, didn't you?
Yes.
Advertising television, that's the same.
Yes, it was. I didn't get many breaks that way. I think the association of product with magicians is not. They never wanted that. They do. They don't mind now. David Copperfield said it was good. Yeah. But I think there was a resistance in New Zealand, as there always is, to magic.
Even today?
I would think so, yes. It's
regardless
regardless of children's art, really, in the long run.
But even today with Siegfried and Roy, magicians like this...
They will save up to go over there, but they'll still switch over to rugby, racing and beer.
Yeah. Well, what about with the ventriloquist in America winning that talent quest? I mean, that must have done great for ventriloquists.
Yes, it is. And of course, Straussman was here, and he did a lovely television program, which I'd love to have been part of, but wasn't good enough to get there. However, the event thing for me was something that I loved, although I must say I neglected for children's work. I really enjoyed doing it for adults initially, and I'd sort of clean the thing up for the children. And I toured with Howard Morrison with them, and that was where the G'day toy came from.
Yeah.
Got that from down by the riverside, and that's kind of one of those things. But it was something that came to me fairly naturally, and there was the robot voice I heard somebody doing on a talent quest for Reg Morgan, doing, "I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, I eat all my spinach right down to the finish, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man." And so that was where I got that voice from. And I was trying to I made Pinocchio and used him in my first little 2-hour show, which was made out of balloons and newspaper and things. And anyway, I couldn't get to try this, make this doll of Popeye and a big nose like that and a pipe and everything. And I was going to try and do it with plastic like I do today, and I couldn't figure out how to get a smooth surface on foam plastic, and it went on and on and on. And eventually, Johnny Devlin tour was offered me, and I knew I could do the voice, and I said, well, I'll make a robot. And I made the Tin Man in about half a day without even a pair of tin snips. And it's still virtually the same.
How old are the two puppets?
They've got to be since I was 18. So,
really? Yeah. And they're the same, the original ones?
Yes.
You're going to see later. Yeah. Getting on to that, George Tollerton, Chuckles with Jerry, we were talking earlier, which I didn't know, but he actually was not a ventriloquist as such, with his radio things. I remember Chuckles, but Archie Andrews and Peter Bruff. I mean, he was on radio too. It seems silly having ventriloquists on radio.
Yeah.
But then, in the paper, I see that you've got a nice story about the dummy that he had. Now, can you tell us that story?
Yes. There was a bit of background to it. I've got two stories from George. George said that he went up and he duplicated. There was an Australian show that they said, well, we want to start one here in New Zealand. I never know who that Australian was. And it was a record. And he said, well, give me the record. And he went away and he got some friends around to his place, and I want you to laugh at the right places. This is the story the way George told it to me. May have been exaggerated to some degree. And then he said, he went along the next time. He said, well, they had all these ventriloquists auditioning. And he said, oh, there you go, that's all right. And he duplicated the record.
This is for radio?
Yes, for the radio people to listen to. Because they had this, they knew an Australian, somebody who was successful overseas. And they said, oh, and then they said, yes, well, we'll do that, we'll take you. And then, but they wouldn't let him go on until he got a puppet. And he had to, at last minute, getting hold of a puppet. And I think the first puppet he got was called Dopey, which wasn't quite this one, but it was featured in one of the magazines. And I think Alan Cox, who was a New Zealand ventriloquist who became very good overseas, he ended up with that puppet. And so that's a side story there, I'm sorry.
But then when George died, this puppet became yours, correct?
Yes, there was some... they didn't want anything done with it. It was getting pretty knocked. It was knocked around and it wasn't working.
His wife was still alive at this time?
No, his first wife had died. And the second lady that was to become his wife, I think, at that point she was acting as the secretary and doing the agency. That was Jean Tollerton. And Jean was a wonderful person for all the acts that dealt with George in that latter year, last years. And they went off to Australia and just left the pup and said, don't do anything with it. And I couldn't do anything with it until they were both gone. And Pat Andrew, who was a great old fan, he'd been in London, he was in New Zealand, and he made ventriloquist dolls. And he said, oh, I like that, I love that doll. It was his childhood as well.
Right. And
so he, I'd heard a couple of their sessions when I was a kid, The Boy Next Door, and I listened to this when it was on radio. And of course I saw Edgar Bergen on a Walt Disney film.
Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Smith.
Yeah, and that was really probably the real flick over for me. But and so that.
But now this Pat
Andrew eventually got it from me after he'd gone, and I let him repaint the face, which he's done quite a nice job. And he was very insistent that we always wanted it to be displayed where radio 1ZB. And he went round and talked to different museums, and some were interested. I'd spoken to the Auckland Museum. They weren't interested. Eventually, the man who makes the caravans, he had a view, and he said yes. I sold it to him, so long as it was displayed in the costume and the thing for about $800.
Now this is the guy that had the museum in Devonport?
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
So that was on display there?
Yes.
And how did it get from there to the museum?
Yeah, then it was bought, his whole stock and barrel was bought by somebody, with a lady that lived just around the corner from me, who worked for him. He was just buying the whole thing as a money-making thing, wasn't really interested in the individual things. And then the next thing, I got a call from the museum saying,
they want to buy it?
They wanted to buy it. They'd heard it was up for auction in Wellington, I think, and they paid about the same money. But they were sort of saying, well, we'd be prepared to pay, $10,000 and all this sort of thing. But anyway, it's now up at the museum, and it's one of their secrets. So I was very pleased to see it being used.
So what is going to happen to Pinocchio and the Tin Man when you flick the twig?
And I don't think I'm making my way up to it. Unfortunately, Calvert, the man I copied, he's 94, so I've got bad news for you.
So would you like them to be in a museum?
Yes, there is. There is
part of our history.
Yes, there's a vent museum in America called Vent Haven, and a lot of puppets have been sent over there. And I think my robot was the first robot ventriloquist doll. Yeah.
Wouldn't they be nicer to have here?
Yeah, I would love to be.
I want to talk to you, before we go on to our silly questions and so on and so forth, about this feature on the 8 o'clock in 1974. £1,000 reward if you can convince John that psychic surgery is for real. You all probably remember this.
Oh, yeah.
And indeed, you did. You actually went in, performed this on television, and showed them that it was fake when people had spent thousands of dollars going to the islands to have these operations done. Did you get lots of threats of these people? I mean, you were dealing with people's lives. I realised it was a delicate thing and you exposed the whole thing. Can you tell us briefly, in that era, what happened?
Yeah, it was quite... I'd said people who were desperate, you know, would say, well, give me the 1,000 and I'll go. I said, well, do you know which man you're going to? No, and they didn't know. And people were very gullible for the whole thing. It had been given, it was really an argument, if you read that, there's a whole thing on that. It was about the media not caring and the dishonesty of the media. I was saying, we don't care. It was nationwide television, and then people like Dr. Lyle Watson came on producing their book, and they were being interviewed and said, oh yes, well, we believe that there's people in there that can produce matter out of nothing, and they went on and on and on, and it went accumulated. Unbelievable, really.
Because you had people coming back from the island saying
yes,
they were cured,
they had there's write-ups and every page of that book. I mean, every paper in New Zealand would have had a write-up. Somebody saying, "Well, I came back and I had I had a blocked nose before I went there. And it's working now." I'm not being facetious there, but that is basically what was happening.
So
because people loved the getting in the paper. You know, that was sort of a glamorous thing. They'd paid their money and gone over there. And they didn't want it to be knocked either. The people, because there's a 60% of, what do you call it, when you take tablets that don't mean anything. There's 60%. And so that can go on and on and on and on for years, and people can make a fortune out of some things. I made a few enemies, I think, in the end, because, you were saying people they were still saying that they were, and probably they would say, well, they wouldn't like me very much after that.
Would you ever retire from the business?
I've been trying to a little bit. I don't know why. I'm just sort of, I'm by myself, really. And it's quite a struggle keeping all the props and house going. There's a multitasking thing going on all the time.
Well, we hope you do. Because you are an institution, there's no doubt about it. And you just look later at some of those scrapbooks over there, there's extraordinary things in those scrapbooks and meetings. You're going to perform for us in a moment, I know.
Am I?
You are.
I don't know.
I'm very disappointed if you're not.
Yeah, I can't think of anything to do.
So you're ready for some silly, quick-fire questions?
Sure.
He's on the phone, he said, you can ask me whatever, and he said, I've got this, that, and the other thing. Many phone calls came, I said, I don't want to hear, I'm just going to fire these questions at you. I wouldn't tell him what I was going to ask him. If your house caught fire, what would be the first thing that you'd run and save? Just one thing.
A drawer with important papers.
What's the trait that you most deplore in other people?
Oh dear. Just love, really.
Who's your favourite author?
Yeah, that's interesting. Hey? Yeah. I haven't. I've always enjoyed Crumpy. Very.
Okay. What's your greatest regret, looking back on your life in general?
Perhaps putting my wife through the strain of going over for That's Incredible and a few things where I was practicing things that were quite dangerous and not coping with that very well. And I was sort of under pressure to give results, and some of those things I'm sure put a bit of a strain on her. But she was a wonderful person and sort of carried it through. She loved the show business really, and she certainly loved all the variety artist people. They were so supportive.
Did you ever have a trip go wrong, desperately wrong, that you couldn't save?
Yeah, probably many times. Yeah, just trying to think of the word. That's a good question. I should be thinking of a funny one. I went up to Japan all the way to walk on fire, and I said that it was all tricky, you know. I said, how? And I also did the fire eating, and I did the Pinocchio and Robbie too, trying to sing Do a Deer while they were singing Awadi Awuna Mai Nawani Mai. I was trying to keep my place. And anyway, they were a wonderful audience. They had a huge show. And they said, okay, we're going to have the fire. And I said, well, and they said, oh, we'll make trays. So I sent a drawing of trays. I put 4 trays or something, about 12 feet, which was 2 steps on each or something. It was a fairly quick thing. But I said, okay, and I gave them the inches, you know. Just a 2-inch metal tray with the fire stacked up, and then you pat it down. And I tried that on the farmer's roof 4 times a day, but there was a few problems with that too, because the metal, it'll burn off the metal, and because it passed the heat on to you quicker. Anyway, that was one of the secrets of firewooding. And I got up there, and they made 2 inches 2 feet. So there was these 2, and they said, we've done it all in one big thing. And it was on wheels, like, you know, and it was at least that high. So there was, this thing was like this, you know, and it was a big, huge.
And on wheels?
Yeah, on wheels. And I had to sort of think of getting up onto it, into this, and it was all charcoal. They had all those little burners they had on the streets, and he said, I said, look, that's not the way to do it. And I go, no, you can't. It's the Firelighter's Union there, you know. It was sort of, you can't make any comment. They know how to light a fire. You're not going to go up there and say, you're lighting a fire. And so there was no option, and there was about a 25% rating for that show, and it was about 20 million possible viewers. And so I had this psychological thing, how am I going to do this? Anyway, I got through all the other things, and got up on this box, and you know, this is the face of the music. And so my feet were going down into this charcoal, about here. And I got to the end, nearly fell off the edge, you know. And going 1, 2, 3, 4, God. And then a big smile. Yeah.
So a lovely thing in the scrapbook there, 20 million viewers on that television show.
Oh, yes.
And he's got 1 fan mail from this lovely Japanese girl after 20 million.
From Hiroshima.
There you go.
No bomb there.
Well, you made a perform for us, but before you do, we're going to ask that question that everybody asked. Well, before we do that, what's your porn name?
My porn name?
You're a porn star. Now, come on, say, what's your first pet's name?
I sort of Pip.
Pip?
Yeah.
And what was the first street
Great
you...
Expectation. Pip Mount Albert Road.
Mount Albert, Pip Mount Albert. That doesn't really work, does it?
No. But Pip does.
Pip works. Well, maybe you discovered that.
It's not much bigger than a Pip.
And lastly, John, who would you turn gay for?
Well, that went with that one, didn't it? That was the, yeah, I've got a Pip there.
Yes.
Well, I can show you a Pip. No, well, oh no. Well, actually, I've got a pin up here of who I would turn. I've been thinking about this very seriously.
He has.
Yes.
He has.
It's somebody.
It's not a joke. He's been on the phone about 4 or 5 times, but don't forget to ask me this because I've got to organise.
Yeah.
Right.
might be a bit of a surprise to you. It's a guy called Ward. And I've been looking at it, and I've decided that tonight will be the night. There you go. Look at this. You want to be disclose this to the
If you will.
yeah.
Is this news to me?
There's the guy I turned gay for.
That's very good. Very good indeed.
I better give him a kiss.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. That is amazing.
I'll try and I'll do it a bit better.
That is fantastic. Oh, why did you believe that? I've always admired the sketches that you've done. Now I've got an original. Thank you very much indeed, John. That is fantastic. Now I'm going to let you. Do you need me with any of these tricks, or are you?
I don't know. I don't know what tricks I was going to do. I was going to tell one little story about because I mentioned it to you, but probably forgotten. And I thought, oh, it's giving away a trick. But when I got the Benny, it was the first night that, the first night they actually televised it. With Lewis on too, but they actually televised the thing because I did a trick with it.
Right.
And it's bordering on, I was hoping to have done it tonight, but this is basically the principle, but we magicians stick together, you see. And Peter Evans, the late Peter Evans, who's been a wonderful friend of mine, and he whispered in my ear the same weekend that the Benny was going to be presented. I said, "I think you've got it." So I had some of the original moulds, well, not the mould really, but I had, so what I did, I got some silver paper and I molded it over this thing. I kept building up layers of the silver paper, and then I got some gold paper too. There was some gold aluminium, and I layered it up over it so that
so it looked like the real thing.
But it was only half. It was only half a circle, and then, which was Peter's idea, we used to get the thing rigid. We actually used molten candle, and we melted it all into this. And it just made it firm enough so that you could sort of hold it like that under a spotlight, and it looked okay. And how did we do it? I think I sneaked it in. It was still rather fragile, and I sneaked it in a toolbox and put it behind the bandstand, and I got my wife, and I worked out a magic song that Wayne Rogers, I don't know whether Wayne's here or not, but Wayne wrote some nice magician song, and I had a line in it about the committee. I didn't know why I got this award as a committee. I think I had one too many, which was quite a nice line, and because we didn't normally give two away. Anyway, what happened was I gave the Benny to my wife while I went and sang this silly song, and she sneaked over and did a little
swapped it over,
and then when I got out there, I said, "Oh, is there somebody got a paper bag?" And I asked the guy here tonight, he didn't have a paper bag.
The thing in the past.
And I said, Benyon got the Benny. He did the egg bag trick, which you would have known, egg bag, and he did a wonderful routine with it. And so I was not going to be, I'm going to do this with the Benny, and so I said, "Oh, here's the Benny," and I said, "Oh, we'll put it on. This is a way to manage the Benny," and I said, "Okay, now everybody say go." So he said, I did the old joke, say go. Yeah, see ya. And then I said, "Oh, I know, you don't believe me, So I came back in, and then we showed the Benny again, and I said, "Oh, you don't really think we can do it?" And we did that. And anyway, it was interesting that trick, and it did make the news. They hadn't covered this. Our media awards were not very well covered because it was Sunday nights.
Oh, okay.
And the TV sort of closed that one. So we don't want to send anybody out to do that.
Yeah.
It was nice that we actually got that covered that night.
Maybe the only time it has been on television, to be quite
A
honest.
little bit, yeah.
Have you got something else for us?
One thing I could tell you, which might come up because I've had great pleasure. I just had somebody talk to me today. I've been over a convention in America. I started making a wand for that opera that I was in. Now there's an opera going on around the corner here at the Opera Factory that I've just been in to help advise because there's a young guy that has to do magic in the opera. And I got the part years ago for Piquel, and they needed a flash wand, which was one of these ones that the producer had written this out that he wants this. It's actually in the script. And the wand is supposed to shoot some fire. And getting that sort of stuff into New Zealand was always a problem. And I made up a wand out of a camera, the old flash cameras, the magic flash cubes. And I got this idea of putting it in the end of a wand with a translucent material. And I could only fire it once. You know. And
Of course, yes.
then I had to put another bulb in. So it was all a bit of a hassle. But we only ever did it, but I worked on it, and then eventually somebody else, and then Jim Joel eventually helped me get it down to even thinner than this. I've got one that's thinner. So Jim, and my association was Jim, he allowed me to make these, and I've been able to export these to magicians, and a lot of those Silkars you mentioned, his son was over here, and it was his wife's wedding anniversary, or their wedding anniversary, and his wife said, I'd like to buy one of those, and they paid the full price too.
Good for
And
you.
you can get a real kick out of this. Oh, that was nice. You wouldn't like that? Oh, go on. Best.
All right, go on. Very good. Very good.
I'm going to get him going, you know.
There you are.
Yes.
It's very good.
I think I did do something a bit drastic on you. Oh, it's on your knee.
Oh, that's
That'll do you. No, I couldn't do the, what would you like out of the hat then?
Well, what about a rabbit?
Oh, sure. What do you think I am? Oh, we could, oh yes, yeah, okay then. Okay. You said you like...
I love opera hats.
You like opera hats?
I think they're lovely.
Okay.
Right.
I can hear.
I can hear something then.
Could I hear something?
I can hear something.
Yeah, I thought I could hear something then. Sound like a cat.
It does sound like a cat.
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, it does.
Oh shit. I'm sorry, no, sit down. Oh, no, it's not, no, I'm only having on. It's a little bit. Is it a kind of dream? Right. Oh, sorry. I'm working on it. Yeah, down into here. There you go. I got it. Oh, well.
Well, that's a good start.
Can we get married?
Thank you very much.
I don't know. You want a rabbit, do you?
A rabbit.
How about well, hang on. What's a cat? Sorry. No, that's not. That's all right. Would you like a little stroke?
That's lovely. Yes, good night. Oh, thank you.
No. Come on. Settle down. No. Show us your face. No, that way. No, you're in the wrong company. Now sit down. You can have a little stroke. Sorry. No, we'll get him right. I've got some stuff there.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Salt.
Oh, that's good. I
You're
never
doing
that.
this joke, yes. Could get assaulted.
Very good.
You've got to be careful when they're eating. Settle down. Now, you asked me to do a guillotine and chop your head off.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I won't do that. I wouldn't want to ruin the future. No, look at that. That's getting bigger.
That's getting bigger. Okay.
Can you do that? It is, it's getting bigger.
You can mark that.
Look at that. Oh, dear. yeah. I could do the old balloon, make a balloon out of bubble. Yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me. He's thinking down there, if this guy can get a rabbit out of this now, he's got to be good. Am I getting bigger? I was going to do something else. Here we go. Big enough, say yes.
Yes.
Listen, it's only got 5 minutes. I can't break my record then. Yeah. Can you hang on to that?
Hang on to that.
Yes, can you hang on to that? Right then. Hang on to that bit. Oh, sorry. Now, if you could like to put your head in here. Should we do the chopping
thing? Yeah, right.
All right then. Well, what do you want, a rabbit or oh, stick it in there.
Okay.
If you put your head in there, you get a real bang out of it. You get a real bang. All right then. We bang it?
Yep.
Right, I'm in it. Oh dear. Who said that? Oh, do you want a rabbit?
Yes.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, one that works?
Yeah, I'll go for anything this time of night.
With it? Okay then. With red eyes?
Yeah, red eyes, yes.
Moving one?
Oh, very good.
You know your rabbits, you got to There you go.
Very good.
There you go.
So very good.
There you go.
Very good. I think that's excellent.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
I think so. Thank you very much. We thank our guests.
I'll bring it back.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I've seen, they're very cheap. Yeah, this is I'll just say hello if I can get him to say hello.
Oh, hello. Hello, Sonia. He's looking at me.
You were looking at her.
I wasn't looking there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, hey, be quiet.
Hey, you want to see her legs? Shh. Got one on each side.
Is that right? Yeah. This is our Robbie. You can just say hello. Take it.
Come on, Robbie.
Robbie! Ooh, what was that?
You just had a back thigh. Shh.
Is it, yeah, Robbie!
Robbie.
Come on.
What's it on his...
What's what?
What's it on his head?
Those are his lights.
Oh, there's headlights. That was a kid's one, wasn't it? Where's his tail lights?
He hasn't got talent.
Where's yours? You're not flashing out of there, are you?
Oh, yeah. All right, yeah, come on, Robbie.
Hey, Robbie.
Say something.
Robbie.
Say something. Robbie! Yeah. I don't say yes properly. Yeah. Say hello. Yeah, g'day. Say hello properly. Yeah, g'day, soaks. Not soaks.
Yeah, your lips are moving.
What? Oh, are my lips moving?
Yeah, you got stretch marks.
I've got stretch marks. You're getting old.
Yeah.
Anyway, you say goodbye.
Oh, we gotta go soon.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll be trying to do a bit of an act with these at the old folks thing we're doing on Wednesday.
That'll be new.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say goodbye, Robbie. Right.
Thank you very much, dear mate.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Very
It's
welcome.
been lovely to be here.
Lovely to have
Can
you.
I sit on your knee?
You can. Come on, jump over.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
I think I could reach.
Hey!
There you go.
I'm going to hear me
You
here.
are a bit heavy.
Yeah.
Coming.
I don't know. Yeah.
How are we going to finish this?
Sing a song. The great
Say
difficulty.
goodbye.
No, I'll get
The
tired.
song.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. We want a song.
yeah.
Sing Down Dear.
That idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I tell you what. We'll have a drink.
Oh, okay.
And maybe we could do one for Sylvia, maybe. You know that the word for gay in Italian is... Does anybody know? Sylvia told me this. Yeah.
What is it? What is it?
It's Pinocchio.
Oh, it's not, is
It
it?
says.
It is. Is it really?
Yes.
Of got dead used to you, know.
Okay. Oh, no. We'll try that. If that tape works, we might be able to do it with it.
Yeah, I'll just try the introduction, eh?
What was that?
I know, it's the introduction. Can you get up?
All right, come on. See if we can get it going.
Yeah.
Oh, you think it's me on a Wednesday or Thursday,
A Friday.
a Saturday and Thursday, and then you like it on a great day, a free day.
Oh, wait a minute.
Early stay away.
Oh yeah,
On my day of rest.
what you get?
Another day that you like this.
Yeah,
Early stay away.
good on you, mate.
On my day of rest.
Well, you can get me on a cool day, a hot day,
Oh, what day?
what yellow one you choose. Oh, you can make it on a great day, a May day, and see it's already you. And if you make it on a great day, a weekday, well, you can be like yes. That neither on a Sunday, the one day we need a little rest. A Sunday, the one day we need a little rest.